Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Getting In, a college coach conversation. Happy that you would spend some time with us this August. I cannot believe it's already mid-August. A little scary. Um, we are going to be talking about the Common and Coalition apps because it is mid-August and those applications are live and available, and we want to walk through them with you. But before we do that, we're going to get to credit reports. And joining me for this conversation is my colleague, Beth Feinberg Keenan, who's also a former financial aid officer at Northeastern University. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Beth.
Thanks for joining today. Okay, credit reports. Before we dive into this, and I think that our listeners know this, but I always think it's valuable to kind of start with the basics because why not? What is a credit report?
So, very basic credit report is a statement that stores information on your credit activity. It stores information on your current credit activity, your past credit activity in terms of open accounts, closed accounts. It has information on mortgages, car loans, credit cards, student loans. So for those
Yeah.
of you who have had student loans or taking out student loans, you're going to see that information there. It's important to know that it stores information on your account balances, credit limit, payment history. So there's so much information that you can see there. But it's also demographic information. Your name is on there, your address is on there. When I think about a credit report, I really consider this to be like your financial footprint.
Hmm.
So if somebody were to say like, you have so many different footprints out there in terms of technology, this is what is like financially. This talks about like your entire history, like as early as you opened up your first credit card, or maybe like you were put on as like a co-signer on somebody's credit card, going off
Right.
to college.
Yep. Well, okay, so it does feel I understand why a credit report is important. I mean, what's more important than your financial footprint? Why is it important as it relates to college, since that is why we're always here, what we're always talking about on the show?
So lenders really use this as a tool to determine credit worthiness. So because it's your financial footprint, they're looking at, are they going to loan you money?
Yeah.
Are they going to loan you as much money as you asked for? And then also, are they going to loan? What is the interest rate? What are the fees that they're going to charge you? So when they're looking at your credit report, determine that. But I want to take a little bit step forward, beyond student loans, because for college students, they're going to look at it for apartments. So if you're looking to rent an apartment, many of landlords are going to ask for your credit history. And maybe they're going to ask for the credit history of a parent, somebody who's going to need to co-sign on that apartment with you and other roommates. And then when you graduate college, some employers are going to ask for your credit
Yeah.
report. So when I remember when I was back at Northeastern, I used to stress this all the time, especially for like business school students, like students who are business majors, and say like, hey, if you're looking to go into the financial industry, like you really need to think about like how much you're borrowing, because that's going to show up on your credit report. And if you have too much debt, a potential employer may say, hey, we're not going to hire you because you could be, a liability for that employer.
Right. The one place it might be a positive is sales, right? Because nobody loves a salesperson more who really needs to earn money. But
Yes.
I do want to be clear, I am not advocating borrowing so much money that you leads to an adverse credit report. I'm just saying that that is a silver lining to a not particularly good situation. But really good points. I was thinking about it from the perspective of how much money you might be able to borrow, but I hadn't really thought about it from the student perspective in terms of the impact it could have on you just when you're graduating and you're out there looking for a job. So that's actually kind of a more hidden impact of having a not particularly good credit report. So interesting. Um, so all of this said, where do you get a copy of your credit report? Since probably those listening now are thinking, huh, I wonder what's on mine if they haven't seen one recently.
So there's a number of different places you can get a copy of your credit report. There's three major credit agencies, credit bureaus. So there's Experian, there's TransUnion, and there's Equifax. So you can log into their website. You can request a copy of your credit report. You can also go to a website, annualcreditreport.com, and you can request a free copy of your credit report there too. You can do that right now because of COVID. You
Yeah.
can actually do it weekly. until the end of the
Wow.
year. I know, I was like, I just looked that up a couple times. I was like, really, weekly? But due to COVID, yes, it was supposed to expire in April, and now it's set to expire at the end of December. So if you're really somebody who wants to take some time and really explore your credit and really get to dig into it a little bit deeper, this is the time to do it and
Yeah,
pull
it
your
sounds
credit
like it.
report frequently.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. And then in terms of, those are some great ones. So, in your opinion, should you ever pay for your credit report? Is that, or is it something where you should be able to get it for free?
You should be able to get it for free, so you shouldn't ever pay for your credit report. You're able to request a free copy of your credit report from each of the credit bureaus once a year.
Hmm.
So I guess really just depends on how frequently you want to pull your credit report. But if you're saying like, hey, every 4 months is good, I don't need to pull it every week. I'm not sure why somebody would necessarily pull it every week right now.
Yes.
But if you decided to say, hey, I want to pull it like every 4 months, you could just kind of rotate through and do Experian, then Equifax and TransUnion. But know that they are three different entities. You might see different information on the different credit reports. So different companies might report into different credit bureaus, different credit agencies. So that's fine. I wouldn't be alarmed that you see something different on like Equifax that you don't see on Experian and vice versa. And TransUnion, different companies when they're pulling your credit, they're going to maybe say, hey, this one only uses TransUnion. So they're not going to pull your credit for all three different agencies when you're trying to get a loan or trying to get an apartment. They're going to go to one agency.
Got it. Okay. Interestingly, I have a credit card that I actually don't really use anymore, but that keeps me updated really, I think kind of once a week. So if my credit score changes for any reason, it lets me know about that. That's kind of a cool thing. Like I said, I don't really use the credit card anymore, but I do like that little piece. So it alerts me if there has been an issue with my
Change.
credit.
I get the
So,
same thing too with one of my credit cards. But I thought that was interesting too, that, you made a great point, Beth, that, you have your credit score
mhm.
and your credit report. And that's, one thing that some of the credit card companies are keeping track of it. If your score changes with even like a few points, they'll say like, hey, like, Beth, like your credit score has changed. And you log in and be like, has it changed drastically? Has it just changed a few points? And if it's just changed a few points, you're like, yeah, who knows what happened this month, that,
Right.
it's a few point different.
Yeah, exactly. But if it changes drastically, that's when you know, uh-oh,
Right.
something may have gone wrong, especially if
Exactly.
you didn't take out a big loan that month, or so far as you know, your credit was the same as it should have been in the previous month. If it drops drastically, there's probably something going on that you want to investigate, right?
Exactly. And that's, a great reason and a little trigger, a good trigger to say, hey, I really need to pull my credit reports and figure out like why, what is happening, what is on my credit report that caused this drastic change in my credit score.
Right. And actually, that does lead me to the question, is there a difference between the report and the score?
There is a difference between the report and the score. The report is exactly that. It's the report. It's the information that is housed on that document. The score is a calculation that is done based on the information that is on that document. So they take into consideration like how long you've had credit for, how much you have an outstanding debt, your timeliness of paying back your liabilities.
Hmm.
It also looks at your length of your credit history. So Beth, you mentioned that you have a credit card that maybe it was the first credit card that you opened, but you don't really use it anymore. But
Hmm.
that shows your credit longevity that you have and that you've established. And then they look at credit mix. I mean, credit cards, student loans, mortgages, car loans. And so they look at the mix of credit that you have that all factors into that credit score. Your credit score, the range for credit score. So if you're thinking like, hey, like, what does my credit score even mean?
Right.
The range is your lowest, the 300s, that's your lowest. And your high is upwards of 850. So if you have, an 800 plus, I mean, then, you really have nothing to worry about. Even like a 750 plus, you probably have nothing to worry about.
Right, right. And I mean, I know that this is going back many years. I went in to get a car and I got the best possible. The dealership was offering a special 0%, believe it or not. I can almost not believe it myself, and I took advantage of it. But you did have to have a certain credit score in order to get that 0% rate. So another reason to all those future college students out there listening right now as to why it's important to keep that credit score where it is, because someday you might be trying to buy a car from a dealership and using their financing, and they might have a great deal that you can only access if your credit score is in a good place. So,
Right. And
yeah.
then that also, I think, goes to Beth, in terms of like pulling your credit. If you are looking to buy a car,
Hmm.
or buy an apartment, buy a house, that's a reason that you may want to start pulling your credit report more often, because you really are interested in what's on that report. And then looking, if you have a credit card company that offers you a credit score,
Right.
making sure you're aware what that credit score is, because that can impact, as you mentioned, the interest rate that you're going to potentially get, and any fees that you might be charged on that loan.
Right. And just so that we're crystal clear, because I think we touched on it, but then went on to something else. What's your recommendation for how often you want to pull your credit report?
I think a good rule of thumb is once a year. I think that's good. I think you're fine, if you're doing it once a year. But if you are looking to make a major purchase, then I think that is a reason that you may decide to pull it more often. And
Hmm.
another reason is if you've been a victim of identity theft. It's
Yeah.
another reason also to pull it more often, because you want to make sure that the information that is on your credit report is actually your information, because somebody has stolen your identity. So there's a possibility that there could be false information on your credit report that could impact other decisions and other things, financial goals that you have, in the near future.
Right, right. Which is obviously incredibly scary if that happens. Are there kind of common errors that maybe are on credit reports that have nothing to do with someone stealing your identity, but just mistakes that can end up on there?
There's definitely mistakes that you could find on your credit report. If you're a junior, your information might be of a parent, and vice versa. It could have child's information because it is similar names. They
Mm,
could have wrong addresses, because if you're moving around a lot, if you're somebody who is recently divorced or even not recently divorced, you could have a situation where you have your ex's information on your credit report still, and that could be detrimental. It could be detrimental to you, depending on how that individual's credit is.
right.
Other things, closed accounts and open accounts. You might see an account saying showing closed, but it's really open, and vice versa, an open account that's actually really closed. Outstanding balances. If that's the case, if you're finding some of this information that isn't accurate, reaching out to the original creditor. So if it's like a credit card company that the balance isn't matching up, that is thousands of dollars off. Not that, hey, I just made a payment, and
Right.
the payment, it's off by the payment, it's off by maybe one or two payments, because they're not necessarily being updated on a daily basis. So there could be a timing issue. But if it's thousands of dollars off, then you definitely want to reach out to that agency, the lender, and try to make sure that what information they have jives with the information that you think that true. And then
Hmm.
you can also send a letter or go online to dispute information that's on your credit report.
Got it. And to your point, you're going to dispute that with the creditor who's providing the information rather than with, say, Equifax or one of the people, one of those organizations, correct?
It depends. I mean, if your information jives with what we'll say the credit card company has,
Hmm.
and you think that's right, but then the credit, like Equifax has a different information, you're going to dispute it with Equifax.
Got it. Okay.
So you're going to send that supporting documentation that you have from your credit card company and say, hey, this
Okay.
is what the credit card company has. This is what I'm under the assumption of too. I'm disputing this. This information isn't up to date.
Okay, got it. All right, that's really helpful. Last question I have for you is, when you access your credit report, is it safe to give your social security number? I mean, I think we're all a little leery of providing that when we don't necessarily have to. And is there any other information that you would need in order to access your report?
It is safe. If you're going to access your credit report on annualcreditreport.com, you need to actually provide your social security number.
Okay.
If you're not comfortable doing that, I mean, like I realize like everyone is not comfortable providing their social security number. You know, there are other ways that they can do it. They can request it be over the phone. They can request it in writing, but then they just have to think about like how fast do they need that credit? How fast do they need that information? Because if they're doing it online and they're able to provide their social security number, they're going to get that instantaneously.
Yeah.
But if they're not comfortable and they're going to do it either over the phone or via mail, it's going to take up to 15 days for them to get that copy of that credit report.
Okay.
But you asked also what other information. They have to have their name. They need to have their date of birth. They need to have their address for the previous 2 years when they're requesting their credit report. So there's other identifying information that they do need to have and can use to get a copy of their credit report.
Awesome. Okay. Any last pieces of advice? I know we talked a little bit about college students and impact on their lives. I think for many of our listeners who are parents, they may be thinking about this in terms of their intention to borrow to help pay for their students' college. Any final advice for them on this piece of things and a timeline on when you might encourage them to be up to date on their credit score and their credit report?
So parents, I mean, right now, as you know, Beth, you mentioned, it's August.
Yes.
So this is the perfect time to be up to date and looking at your credit if you're concerned about being able to co-sign on a loan for your student. But for parents, one of the pieces of advice that I want to share with you is remember that if this is your first child off to college and you plan to take out loans for other children, the money that you're borrowing for this child is going to show up in your credit report. It can impact your credit score, and it can impact you being able to take out other loans for other children or the interest rates and fees that you're going to get on loans in the future for other children in the future.
Got it. Yeah, and that's really important to note, right? So you're making decisions today for child number 1. If you have child number 2, 3, 4, etc., understand the implications for them. So, Beth, thank you so much for joining today. This was really helpful, and I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are talking all about the common and coalition applications and getting started with those. So don't go away.